Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. New episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. We're also on social media at Epstein Hitting on Twitter and Instagram, at Jim Tara. Submit us your questions, and you can also email us too, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. That's jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. We won't have any time for questions today, but we will get to them down the line here. A lot to talk about with Bryce Harper and his swing breakdown. Just to give you sort of a introduction to Bryce, if you don't know who he is, six-time All-Star. By the way, new dad. He's going to be a new dad. He already has a little boy, a son,
nice.
And he's about to be a father to a girl. He's about to be a girl dad. He posted that. I saw it came up on my Instagram feed that he's going to be a girl dad. Him and his wife, Kayla, will be having a daughter. So congratulations to the Harper family. Bryce was the first overall draft selection by the Washington Nationals in 2010 after Steven Strasburg. He came up with Washington in 2012, so he pretty much blew through the minor league system, which you kind of expect with number one overall picks. Came up in 2012, made his debut in Los Angeles at Dodger Stadium. Quite the place to make your debut. He had to fly across the country to do it. He was the Rookie of the Year that year. Made an all-star appearance, kind of had a little bit of a gaffe, if you will, in left field where a fly ball went over his head. He misplayed it badly in Kansas City, but nevertheless, still an all-star Rookie of the Year. What were your thoughts when he first came up? I saw a kid who, and he was a kid at the time, who still didn't grow into his body. He still looked like a college player. He ran like a college player. His body language was like a college player, and the way he sprinted in every facet. He just didn't have the wisdom, which that's everybody. That's nothing wrong with that. That's as you get older in any walk of life, you gain that wisdom. But he also, his body, he wasn't as muscular as he is now. He didn't fill out, and the body still hasn't matured yet. But nevertheless, he was a tremendous athlete. What were your thoughts when he first came up?
Well, so polarizing. I mean, when he graduated from high school early, he was, highly, highly touted. Everybody knew he was going to be great, from the time he was like 15 years old. He was dominating. He was, even though he wasn't massive, he was an early mature.
Yeah.
He hit balls really far. There's videos of him, swinging a 35-ounce bat or a 40-ounce bat when he was like 15 years old. They got a lot of traction. And, when he came up, he was, on a scale of 1 to 10, he was a 12. He was so aggressive.
Right.
He was trying to, he had to prove himself. That's a lot of pressure. And he was probably 19 years old. A lot of guys fly through the minor leagues coming out of college, right? This guy flies through the minor leagues coming out of high school that he graduated early. I guess he went to junior college for a year or so first after he graduated high school early. But he did. He ran hard, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want people to think that, big leaguers dog it. They play 162 games, so they have to be a little bit more cautious with their body. College players they're going to stick their nose in the dirt, and they're going to run as hard as they can. They're going to slide as hard as they can. They're going to run into walls. They're going to, because that's what it is. You're playing for your team, right? And you're going to do anything you can for that team. And sometimes in pro ball, for better or worse, you're playing for money, right? And you're playing for a contract. And, maybe, if you pop a hamstring or a groin and you miss 20 games, that might be, 3 home runs that you hit, and you end up with 27 instead of 30. And then that was the barrier to maybe get you $2 million more the next year in your contract or arbitration.
Right.
So
yeah.
Everything leads to something else, in Major League Baseball. But, I heard a story. He was at a showcase at USC, Southern Cal, and they have parking structure in right field. And anyway, he was just going right balls to the walls, and he's throwing. He's a catcher right at this time, and so he's doing pop time. So he airmails one into center field like during something, and he picks up a ball. He's so upset, and he throws it into the parking garage, 385 or 400 feet away. And that's what all the scouts talked about. They didn't talk about anything else about his bad throws to center field. They're like, oh, my God, did you see how far he threw that ball? Yeah. And, that's just the kind of guy he was, and still is, right? He's uber competitive. He's going to give you 100% when he's out there. And that's probably why he got paid. Nobody has to worry about him dogging anything. They don't have to worry about, antics off the field for the most part. He hasn't had any run-ins there. So, hey, if this guy can stay healthy, he's as good as it gets.
Yeah, I was going to say that his emotions always seem to run very, very high. I think he absolutely loves this game, and he treats it like it is his job. He understands every facet that he does in BP, in warming up, stretching, mobility work. He has fun doing it, but he understands that it leads to the game. And I think, again, like you mentioned too, the off-the-field antics, it just isn't there. And off-the-field antics can come in any form. I mean, they can come in the clubhouse, in giving front office members a problem, tweeting the wrong things. You never see that with him. He has very, very high character, was raised well, and I think if there's one knock on him that some people may say, well, he is sometimes misunderstood. I could see that, but I think overall, the high character, and he's just very uber competitive, like you mentioned, and very intense. So in 2013 and 2014, they were kind of some lull years there. In 2013, at 274, 20 bombs, 58 knocked in. 2014, 273, arguably his worst year, I think. It was just unproductive across the board. 13 home runs, 32 runs batted, and that was it, a career low. There was some talk there that he would be sent to the minors and try to figure things out, but then he came back. The Nationals actually ended up making the postseason that year, lost to the Giants, Bruce Bochy, your friend. But in 2015, he came back, and you saw that body transformation where he wasn't that skinny 19, 20-year-old kid that we saw in Dodger Stadium in 2012. We saw a kid now who really turned into a man. He grew. He got more muscular, and it showed. I mean, he was faster, more mobile. He was quicker. He had more wisdom, just in general, of how to attack pitchers. And he was an MVP that year in 2015. He led the league in runs, home runs, on-base percentage, slugging, OPS. Analytically, he was in the top 5 in most important categories. I don't know. That 2015 year, I look back on it and I say, wow. That was when he came up. That's what people were expecting from Bryce Harper.
And then nobody pitched to him after that.
Right.
Is essentially what happened. He didn't have a ton of protection in that lineup.
Yeah.
Because Soto didn't come in for a couple years after that, right? Maybe 2 years after that when Soto made his debut. 3 years after that. So, he all of a sudden he was getting pitched around. He was walking. He got, quasi Barry Bonds treatment for a while. And then that plays with your head. You start chasing and trying to do too much and putting the team on your back. And that's a tough situation. For every great player, there's always somebody else driving that great player that has a great season. You talk about Mantle and Maris. You talk about McGuire and Sosa. Guys typically have a running mate that they're competing against, in that lineup. And a couple, after he won that MVP year, there really wasn't that driving force. Zimmerman started to get hurt. Who was the other guy? The big outfielder, Worth. Was Worth there?
He was starting to wind down. He did have Anthony. Yeah. He did have Anthony Rendon, but Rendon wasn't at his peak quite yet.
No,
not quite yet. I mean, he was. No. Bryce was kind of the centerpiece of the Washington Nationals there for a very, very long time. And I think last year, that when they won the World Series, you thought of Anthony Rendon, but who did you really think of as the centerpiece of the Washington Nationals? I mean, you could have Max Scherzer, but on the offensive side,
their pitching staff, I would say.
I mean, you kind of just saw a collection of guys there that are really good players, and Juan Soto's sort of turning into that main piece. But when Bryce exited, it was kind of like, okay, now there's a collection of guys there. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, in 2015 and through 2018. He was an all-star every year, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Last year, first season with the Phillies. This offseason, he struggled a bit. The whole team struggled. But this past offseason, he was working, I saw some videos online of a toe tap. He was working on the toe tap a little bit, trying to slow things down. And he still posts videos about the toe tap. And, I mean, gosh, anytime, you see him in the cage and you hear that sound coming off the bat, my God, it sounds like a bullet. It really does. Mm-hmm. It's very, very loud. There's a different sound to it, as scouts would say. Before we get into the video, when he's going well, what really sticks out to you in his swing?
Usually breaking balls. He's sitting on breaking balls more. Mm-hmm. And I feel that usually by sitting on breaking balls, meaning you're anticipating breaking balls, you'll slow your rhythm down. The rhythm essentially is, from your stance to your load into your rear leg, and then your leg kick and stride to heel plant. So that's really your rhythm is from your stance to heel plant is considered rhythm, which encapsulates load and stride. It's slower, right? And that can be said for any player that's jumpy. So, you go back and, I'll trace back when I remember Harper seeing him the first time when he was like in high school. Mm-hmm. Huge legs, huge leg kick, super wide base, long stride, big weight shift, but stayed back. Used all that energy to support 180 pounds, right?
Sure.
And hit balls 400 feet. Then he goes into the minor leagues, whatever. I see him come to the big league camp a year or two later, mm-hmm. and he's got a no stride, kind of just actually like an early stride. He just gets his foot down early, and then he tries to drift into it and hit. And I'm like, oh, you can't do that. Like you can't take someone that has big rhythm and a big stride and take it away because you feel that he's being overmatched with stuff and his timing. You have to let that player fail with that timing, mm-hmm. with that rhythm, and try to figure it out because that's in his DNA. It'd be like Juan Marichal not having a super high leg kick, when he was pitching. Like, that's him. That's what made him who he was. Or Nolan Ryan, how high he would bring his knee up. And, that was Harper. So I'm like, well, that's not going to last. Well, he failed miserably with it. And then the next time I saw him come up, he was back to what he looked like in high school, and he was awesome. So the fact that he wants to put a toe tap in to help with his rhythm and timing, I'll be very anxious to see how that works. A toe tap typically happens before the ball, before the pitcher really starts to break their hand. So I would consider it kind of a load versus a stride, meaning It happens when a player loads their weight into the back foot.
Yeah.
Then they'll typically toe tap, but it doesn't affect a lot of the stride going forward because you're still toe tapping back, assuming that's what the toe tap is, and it's not like he's getting his foot down early again. It's He's bringing his foot back and tapping and then going forward. It's a very complex move because you're adding a piece of it. Now, if you do it early, it's not really a big deal. It's just kind of part of your stride. You're just moving sooner. So it's probably why he's trying to do it, to slow everything down because he gets big. And that's what's kind of cool on this video that I have here that we'll look at again on the YouTube link is I have one video of him taking BP, mm-hmm. and we'll see what he's working on during BP. There's also a video of him doing pregame BP, like in the tunnel, what he does. He does top hand, and it looks like he's kind of chopping down with his top hand. He does bottom hand. He does, a couple other things, and then he goes into his full BP. So I don't know if it was on MLB.com a couple years ago, but it's a really cool little piece of a look in at how a guy prepares for a game. What he does. He doesn't spend a lot of time on it. He probably did, 6 or 7 top hands, 6 or 7 kind of just a barrel throw kind of drill, getting his hands loose. And then he kind of works in his legs nice and slowly, and then he gets big with the legs. And anyway, we'll be able to see in these swings. One's a game swing home run where he's actually late, which is great for him. He was late on a fastball. He had to get his foot down sooner, even though he had a big stride. Mm-hmm. And then we can look at the upper body mechanics as well, because that's what gets his swing plane consistent when he's going so well.